I am pumped for this topic because I feel like this is such a simple, it's a good word. Yeah. This is thinking about my wording. That this is such a simple and obvious theme, but I think it's something that so many people miss. And I think it's what makes a lot of people show up a ton and not see the sales or the results they want. And I think it is super fixable. It's just hard for a lot of us to see our own stuff in this. So I'm going to walk you through this, but just excited to be able to kind of shine a light on this because I really see that it's something that keeps so many people stuck. And especially like when you're working super hard, you do not want to have to deal with that. So, thanks, Claire. I'm glad I look fab and not tired. I'm not feeling fab and not tired, but I will roll with it. Hi, Jen. Hi, Amanda. Oh my gosh. Yay. Thank you guys all for being here and saying hi. This makes my day and it makes me not tired. Okay. So basically, you know, I'm always going to cut to the gist. I'm just going to tell you what it is. Then we're going to explain it and roll from there. But the one thing I see is like giving people a reason to buy from you and seeing that as your job and like really overly communicating that. I think that what happens is a lot of entrepreneurs are like out there showing up and giving value, but they're not really explicitly saying like, and this is why you should hire me. And this is why I'm the best person you could hire. And this is what makes me different, and like really fully encapsulating that and giving people that context. I think that a lot of people feel like that's braggy or, you know, they feel like they shouldn't have to say that, or they feel weird saying that, or like there's like this whole plethora of reasons we don't do that. But there is nothing more important than you being explicit with why someone should hire you particularly, why someone should be putting down their credit card to work with you. And if you're not willing to say that, you're asking your audience to jump through a whole lot of hoops and make a whole lot of connections. So you're just making sales way, way, way harder on yourself. And I think that, again, this is one of those things where it seems so simple and so obvious, but just so few people really do that. And our brain will just give us all these reasons why we shouldn't. Like, well, I can't really tell people that, you know, I'm the best person that they should work with. I like haven't even been doing this that long. Okay, well, how do we solve for that problem though? Because it is actually your job to figure out why people should hire you. And like, I think that that can get really twisted with like, oh, but you shouldn't have to like prove your worth and all of that. And I agree with that. I talk all the time about how it's about showing, not proving. And so we'll talk about that a little bit today too. But like, I think that sometimes our industry swings so far the other way of feeling like we shouldn't have to say any of that. And it's like, right, but like we're still a business running a business, and businesses are fundamentally built on this idea of being able to give people a reason to buy, right? And so if you're showing up and giving a ton of value, but you're not giving them a really, really specific reason to buy from you in particular, like they're probably just not going to make all of those connections, or you're going to get some sales, but you're not going to get nearly as many, right? Yeah, no reason to make sales hard. Exactly. Like make the connection for your people, and honestly, like see that as your job. Like I really look at it as like, it is my job to tell everyone why I think I'm the best coach that they could hire. Like that is fully and completely my piece of the pie, right? It's your job to decide if you want that and to get to know me more to decide if that's true and all of that. But like, that is my piece of the pie. So it's almost like if you were looking for a job in corporate, like being like, no, I shouldn't have to fill out a resume, and I shouldn't have to like come to this interview and tell you all the reasons you should hire me. Like I shouldn't have to do that. Of course you have to do that. Like that's part of the jig, right? And so the same is true in your business. Like you can get value all day long, but unless you're making those connections for them, like people are not going to automatically jump to that in their minds. Like unless I was saying to you like, hey, I'm like the best coach you can hire. I've got my clients XYZ result. I have like XYZ experience and criteria, and I have this education and this background, and I've done XYZ in my business, and I've helped my clients get XYZ results. Like you might consume my content and think it's valuable, but you're not necessarily being like, and I have to hire her, right? Those are very different things. And so sometimes we think like giving value is all I have to do. And I certainly talk about giving value constantly, but like giving value and then giving someone a reason to buy from you is what fills out the cycle there, right? And so if you're making up all these reasons in your head why you shouldn't do that, why that's braggy, why you don't have a good reason yet, those are the problems to solve for, right? So we'll talk about this, but like what too many people do is just go like, oh, I shouldn't have to say that, or like that would be too braggy, and they move on versus being like, oh, okay, yes, it's my job as a business owner to make the connection for people of exactly why they should hire me and say it constantly and explicitly. And so if I'm having resistance to that, it's my job to work through the resistance versus how can I work around it? Like if you want to run a long-term successful business, you are never going to get out of the fact that you have to tell people why they should hire you and why you're such a good investment to make. And again, if you feel like you can't say that in a way that feels true and good, that's just your job to figure out. It's not like, oh, that means you suck at your business and you should shut it down and you're not good enough. No, that just means figure it out. Like, so an example for me is like when I started this business, I took on 3 clients like for 3 months for free because I wanted to be able to say like, here's what I'm doing with my clients. Here's why you should hire me. Here's something I'm really good at. I talked about my degrees a ton then. I rarely talk about them now. So I have an MBA and I have a master's in mental health counseling. I leaned on that a ton then in a way I don't as much now because that was my thing at the time. So like, that's also something to remember. I think that sometimes we come into a space like this and we think, well, the only thing I can ever lean on is like results and client results or my own personal results. And so I don't have that. And so I feel inadequate. And it's like, well, you have to figure out what you do have, and then you have to take the responsibility for communicating that a ton. So what I had at the time was some education behind me. Okay, great. So like I use that and leverage that. And again, like you can take that to be like, oh, well, I don't have education around that. So what am I supposed to do? Figure out what your thing is. Like your thing might be totally different than that. Like it might be that you had this one specific skill set in a job that you used to have, or it might be that you have certain experience in some way, or that you bring different value than someone else because you have XYZ life experience. It doesn't matter what it is. It just matters if you're clear on that and if you're explicitly communicating that. Again, if you feel weird about that and you're not communicating it, and then you're expecting your audience to jump through all the hoops to make the connection, you're just leaving money on the table, like quite a lot of it, to be perfectly honest, right? So yes, so good. Hi, Amy. Kristen, yes, thank you. So I think just like an interesting thing is if you're watching, just tell us why someone should hire you. Just like say that explicitly and get in the habit of training yourself to do that. Like fundamentally saying that all the time. It's like how I say in value-centered sales, like the number one thing is get sold on yourself first. Like this is why it's a non-negotiable, because if you're not and you're waiting for other people to get sold on you and then reflect that to you, you could be showing up for months and months and months and months, giving a ton of value and not seeing the sales you want to see. If you get really sold on yourself and then you consistently and constantly communicate that while giving value, people are going to start to make that connection and see that. Like, but the opt out of that is just a non-option. Like, well, let me rephrase that. It's an option. It's just not a great option for your business. Like if you're always trying to sidestep having to explicitly tell someone why they should hire you, that is your work. Like that is not like, how do I get really good at sidestepping it? It's like, how do I get uncomfortable enough to do it? Right. And where people get tripped up on this sometimes is, twofold: the braggy side, which we'll talk about, and the I shouldn't have to side, right? Yeah, like it's kind of your job. So like seeing it as your job to show people and tell people why they should hire you really takes away a lot of the intensity around it. So you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Like, this isn't like a prove that you're worth it thing. This is a show them why they should hire you thing. And when we can separate those out, it's so much easier to show up in business. Like you don't feel like you should have to show up in this energy of like, look at me trying to prove everything. But like the pendulum can swing so far the other way where then you're not saying anything about it, right? So like I mentioned at the beginning, I was sharing about my degrees a lot. Like that wasn't like, look at me proving that I have value. That was like, hey, this is like the thing I have. So let me show you why that's valuable. Let me speak to that. Let me be explicit about that. Let me communicate that, right? And what that does is help your people have permission to hire you. So we're going to talk about that in a second too. Like that permission to hire you is so fucking important. So anyway, the other side of this is I'll feel like I'm bragging. Well, I don't know about you, but the person I hire, I want them to be bragging. I want them to be really sure of themselves. I want them to be really certain, right? If you're not bragging, like that almost makes me wonder a little bit, right? Like, I think they're really, really, really amazing, but I've really never heard them say that. Like, I wonder if there's something I'm missing. Like, it makes your audience second guess themselves a little bit if you're not willing to communicate that and reflect that. So, ultimately, most of us, if we're hiring someone, want them to be loud and vocal about having those results. Sorry, guys, I have to do a cough drop if it's annoying. I apologize. You can hear my sucking on it. But, right, like if I'm going to hire a relationship coach, I want to hear that she thinks she's fantastic and that her relationship is amazing. Like that is a relevant metric to me. I'm not like this braggy bitch talking about her great relationship, right? I'm like, oh, good. Yeah. It seems like shit. It's true. And so like, it's good hearing you say that. That gives me permission to take the next step, right? Like that is so relevant. It's not just like bragging, although there's nothing wrong with that. It's really permission giving too. And it really solidifies that. Like to be in a situation where I'm expecting the person hiring me to be more willing to brag on me than I am to myself is a really detrimental place to be. So that's what we're going to talk about is the permission there, right? So good. Sherry says, do you see this as being more general to who you are and how you approach working with someone, or how do you see this as differing for each offer you have? Can you give an example of how you do this? Yes, totally. Do you see this being more general or based on offer? Okay, I get your question. I had to process. I think it can be both. I think you definitely should have a general overview of like what your differentiating factor is and why you feel like people should work with you specifically. And then I feel like you can also have that for your offers too. So for example, for me, like I really feel like I'm the best coach you can hire in terms of like the skill I bring to the table, the experience I have, the results I've gotten myself and the results I've gotten my clients. I think it is a huge differentiator to bring all of those things together, to combine it with mindset, strategy, and execution, and to be a coach who can bat all of those together so that you get the biggest result and so that you're not just getting support in one area, but all of them, which is what's going to help you create these big results. Blah, blah. That's just an example. I'd probably say it better if I had thought about it, but that's like overarching. But then I could have it around one-on-one too. Like from what I've seen, like one-on-one is going to get you the best, fastest, most impactful results. It's going to make all the difference in your business. Like the one-on-one work I do is super deep. My clients constantly talk about how it is such a life and business transforming experience. And the best way to get that is through one-on-one. Like that container makes all the difference. And you're crazy if you don't spend on one-on-one support instead of on a course or some other thing that's going to give you a lot of information and not help you make a lot of progress. So you see how those are different. Like one is like, why me? One is like, why my specific offer? So I think that's important to have both. And again, to be able to be explicit about it, because we're asking, if you think about it like this, your audience has to answer both of those questions in their head to buy from you. My audience has to answer why Lacey and why one-on-one in order to buy from you. So if I'm not answering that for them constantly, I'm just missing a huge opportunity. If you have a group program or whatever, your audience has to answer why you and then why this program, why this offer, why this thing. So you're fast forwarding the process exponentially by just answering that often for them so that they, again, don't have to jump through all these hoops in their brain to get there. You're giving them that context in that container. Tristan said works in dating too. My dating numbers were not great during my 15 years. Stand around pretty girls and let the rest take care of itself phase. Asking works. Oh my gosh, that's so funny, Tristan. That's such a good example though, right? Like you're like, I'll just be in their vicinity and see what happens. Or like, I could just tell them I want to go out on a date with them and see how that goes. It's wild when we just tell people, right? So good though. Also, you know, I love a good dating analogy, but like so fucking relevant is like, can you close the gap for people? Like that's what so much of marketing is about, is like, can you close that gap for people? Can you speak to what's in their mind? Can you answer the questions they're going to have to answer? And those are absolutely non-negotiable questions. Like the value might make them interested in asking themselves those questions, but you still need to give them answers. Like me showing up on here every week and giving you guys value might make you want to answer why Lacey, why one-on-one, but it's just the start. And then that's the next step. You're not just going from like, oh, she gives a ton of value, done, right? You're going from like, she gives a ton of value to like, I would really consider working with her. Why her? What about her, you know, makes this the right fit? Cool. Why one-on-one? What about one-on-one is the right thing for me? Like those questions have to get answered, right? So you not answering them for your audience is just asking them to do a lot more work. And again, leaving money on the table. Sherry says, yes, thank you. I get a little stuck differentiating the benefit of my approach personality versus the tactical pieces of the offer. Super helpful. Okay, good. So here's the next thing. Your potential client is not only going to have to answer this question for themselves, they're going to have to answer it for other people. Okay, this is big. This is such a big one. They're going to have to answer it for people in their life, typically, whether that's a partner, a friend, a parent, whatever. Like they're having interactions with other people where they're going out and saying like, hey, I'm hiring this person. And they're going, oh, wow, why? Why are you doing that? Tell me about that. Like they're not only having to answer it for themselves, they're getting asked that question. So if you've given them a lot of information, they have a lot of like ammo there, right? So like one of my clients said her dad was like, just being very like, why are you hiring this person online? Like, what is going on there? And like just asking a ton of questions. And so she knew, because I had talked about my like education and experience quite a bit, she was able to be like, well, actually, you know, she has 2 master's degrees and she's helped clients with XYZ results. And she has this way of thinking about things with mindset, strategy, and execution. And she said that her dad was just like silent for a little bit and was like, yeah, she seems smart. That seems good. Like, right. Like he couldn't like say anything there. But like, if we're just like relying on our audience to figure that out, then like when they have that interaction with someone, they don't have like the backup there, right? So give them that. Like, couldn't they go say to their husband, like here's a good example. So it'd be very hard to like go to your partner and just be like, well, like I just really resonate with Lacey's content. Most people are going to be like, and we're spending thousands of dollars with her because you resonate with her content. Like, say more. So your audience is going to experience the same thing. Can you give them a reason like, oh, I like really resonate with Tristan's content and he brings XYZ to the table and he has XYZ experience, or whatever your unique thing is, like your particular story, your particular education, your particular experience, whatever. Like help give your people an answer to that question. It's not like, that was just an example I gave. Like I'm by no means saying like it has to be like mine. I'm just saying, see how it was really helpful for her to have an answer when her dad was giving her a hard time about that. it could have been any answer, but as long as like you are helping prime your audience with the answer to that question, it is so, so different in terms of how they feel buying from you, right? If they're not primed with the answer, that can really make them question their own decision. Like, say she hadn't learned all of that about me and I hadn't said any of it and hadn't been explicit, then her dad asked her that and she's like, I just like really resonate with her. And he's like, well, you're spending thousands of dollars with a stranger online because you like what she has to say. Like, I don't know. Like, and it could really make her second guess herself. Versus like if you're explicit consistently, then not only is it easier for them to be a yes to you, it's easier for them to help other people that might be really important factors in their life be a yes to you too, right? This is super funny, but when I hired my very first coach, it was Mel Farr, and I remember at the time I was married to my ex-husband, and I remember being in the car and we were like listening. I had him listen to something she did, and she really like talked herself up a lot. And I remember him being like, yeah, she sounds great. Like, you should definitely hire her. And it was like just so fucking easy because she made it easy for me, right? And so that's just a good reminder. It's like, how are you making it easy for your audience to get themselves on board and to get the people in their life on board? Like, that really is your job. And again, it doesn't have to come from this prove place. Like, oh, now I have to not only prove it to them, but I have to prove it to their partner too. Like, no, you're running a business. You get to tell them what's true and fill in the gaps for them, again, because that's what marketing is about. So you fill in the gap for your potential client, help them fill it in for their partner or their parent or their friend or whoever they're going to have this conversation with, right? If you're not, like, that's where a lot of gaps are going to come in your sales process in your business, because they're not going to have that context when they leave your conversation to convince themselves later when they're having a stressful moment, or speak to their partner about it or whatever. Belinda says, I feel like I should start writing letter to the others that my client will be telling about me. For sure. Like, I think, like, so here's just like an example, but one of my clients, I just want to like make sure I'm like respecting her privacy, but basically, like, she has a business that has a very non-tangible outcome, let's say that. And so one of the things we've done in her sales process is we actually made a video that people can show to their partners, because she was getting a lot of pushback in her sales process where people were like, I really get it and I love you and I resonate with you and I see the value, but like, my partner is just like really, really, really struggling with it. They just don't get it. And so that was something we added to her sales process. Like, we added in like this video where she much more explicitly explains like why it seems non-tangible, but why it actually is, and like what her credentials are, and like what she's helped clients accomplish, and like all of this stuff in this really succinct 10-minute thing. And so it's been really useful for her to be able to literally provide her potential clients with that and be like, hey, listen, totally cool if you don't need this, but just so you know, like, this is a video I have. It kind of explains everything. If it would be easier for you to show your partner this, like, just wanted to give it to you just in case. And it's been such a hit with people because it's also the topic she works with is kind of like a hard topic for a lot of people to talk about. And so she kind of removes that barrier too by being willing to be explicit and tell people why they should work with her, even tell their others, like Belinda said, right? And fully seeing that as her job, instead of being like, oh my God, these stupid partners who like don't get this, like I shouldn't have to prove anything to them, whatever. Like quite the contrary. Like, how can we make that easier? The easier we make it for people to buy from us, the more sales we get. And this idea of being explicit, of saying exactly why people should buy from you and seeing that as your consistent and constant job, is such a fucking game changer, because again, it makes it so much easier for everyone else to do that, for everyone else to get on board with that. And so I think that that's just sort of like a helpful oh my God, my brain. I told you I was tired today. A helpful middle ground to find yourself in where it's not like, oh, I'm over here having to like prove everything, or I'm over here like not saying anything. Like, let me get in the middle ground and just see that as like, this is a function of being in business. This is part of my job of being in business, is to figure out what the answer to this question is. If I can't figure out the answer, certainly I can assume that my ideal client will not figure out the answer either, right? So it's like, if I were to say to you, what would you say to someone if they said their partner like really didn't get what you did and weren't sure about hiring you? Like, if you freeze at that question, if you don't have an answer to that, good, you just know the next problem to solve in your business. Like, the next problem to solve in your business is figuring out what that answer is. Again, instead of being like, well, I shouldn't have to, or I would never, do that, or that would feel so weird to make a video that someone could give to the, no. Work through all the resistance, because again, this is your job in business, is to answer that question often, consistently, and explicitly, right? And if you can, it doesn't feel salesy anymore because it feels like truth. Like, that video isn't a salesy video that she's added where we're like, and like, it's like, here's the truth. Like, here are what my credentials are. Here's why people get amazing results working with me, blah, blah, blah. Like, all of that context is so valuable. And so again, like, you can come at that from an energy of like, oh my God, of course, let me help you show your partner what the value is. Or you can come from this place of feeling like, oh my God, I have to like overprove and whatever. That is not this, right? There's nothing to prove here. There is just something to state and be explicit about. And like, here's the really interesting thing too. When you say it like that, most people don't second guess you. You know what I mean? Like, this is just a stupid example, but I'll use it. But it's like, how like you could like crash someone's wedding, and if someone was like, oh, who do you know, the bride or the groom? And you're like, oh, like the bride and I are friends. We like, go way back. Everyone just is like, yeah, true, cool. Doesn't question. If you were like, it's just obvious. Like, there is something weird there. So I don't know why the wedding crashing thing came to mind, but like, my point is, most people don't question you when you speak truthfully and with confidence. And so, I think like a lot of people feel weird of like, oh my God, but like, what if I say, that I have like this experience and this life experience, and then someone questions me on that or thinks it's not good enough or whatever. Well, like, they're probably not. Like, if you say like, I'm the best person you can hire for this reason, most of our brains aren't like, yeah, but fuck you, is that true? We're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, totally. Do you see what I mean? So it's like, the way that you practice being able to speak about this, deliver this, be clear about this, is so, so impactful on the way people receive it. So if you're kind of like worried about like, how is that going to be received? I promise you, most of us aren't questioning it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not like reading stuff all day long and being like, but is that true? Is that true? Is that true? We're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, that's just how our brains work. And so when you give your audience that all the time, it becomes so different in terms of what your sales process looks like. So I like joke about this all the time, but I talk about, why you should hire me, because I combine mindset, strategy, and execution. I'm like a coach that works with you on all levels and can play all of those games with you and blah, 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 blah. People literally come to my sales calls and are like, well, I'm positive that I need mindset, strategy, and execution. I need you as a coach because I need help with all of those and da, da, da. They're basically like repeating me back to me because I've said it enough. I've given them enough of a reason to understand that, to connect to that, all of that kind of stuff, right? So that's really valuable to see that, like, the more I'm willing to say that, the more people are like, yes, that's true. That is what I need. If I was never doing that, I promise you, nobody would be getting on the phone with me going, well, I really need mindset, strategy, and execution. I think you're the person to give it to me. That would not be happening. Like, nobody is going to be making all of those connections. Well, Lace, I've listened to your content for long enough that I realize that mindset, strategy, and execution is a thing. And I think maybe based on all of the value you provided that you might be no, right? Like, most people are not going to do all of that mental work to get there. But me saying it often and consistently and really, really, really clearly is what's making people say that back to me on calls. Does that make sense? So I really want you to think about how this isn't like a thing that has to make you feel bad or make you prove anything. This is just like a fundamental question to answer in business, and then to really say explicitly all the time, because it is what is going to make people have a reason and have an easy yes to hiring you. Belinda says, when I tell someone that, I'm also telling the full truth. When I tell them when I tell someone I'm who they should hire, I'm not BSing. I believe in them that much. And it took years of learning to trust the results I bring, for sure. And I think like that's the gift we can give ourselves, is like, how do I get to that place where saying that feels like full truth, total trust, all of the kind of stuff that Belinda's saying. And it doesn't mean you might not have to do any lifting around that. Like I was mentioning, like I took on clients for free. I did 1 million free calls, all of this stuff to get to a place where I was like articulating that really, really clearly and really well. And obviously, again, that's evolved over time in my business. So there might be like some effort and like a lift associated with getting to that place for you, but don't misconstrue that with like thinking that that would be a bad use of your energy, or that, you know, you shouldn't have to prove anything or whatever. You don't have to prove anything, but again, you do have to be able to answer that question really clearly and truthfully in your head, and you do have to be able to communicate that. And so if the solve for that is get a free client, great. Like then you know that, like you know the solution there. So I think that's just super helpful to see, where we're like so quick to make that wrong sometimes in our industry. And like for me, I'm like, well, that's the fast forward button. If you know the challenge point is you're not as clear or as confident as you want to be in articulating why someone should hire you and your value, and getting a free client gets you there faster, I think you'd be crazy not to do it, right? Like solve the right problem is something that I'm constantly saying. So if you're listening to this and you're like, this is a thing in my business, please, please, please let yourself solve this, because whether that means a free client or practicing saying it in the mirror, or, you know, whatever that is, knowing this and then speaking it often is truly going to be the biggest game changer in your sales process, because people are going to reflect that back to you. And again, then they're going to be able to communicate it to the other people in their life that are saying, well, why are we doing this? Why are we spending on this? What's going on here? Like make sure that they have a really beautiful reason to articulate. And don't see that as a negative. See that as like another way that you're supporting your clients. Like I think in this industry, we just are so quick to turn like normal aspects of business into like, you know, something that's very like, well, if you really believed in yourself, you wouldn't have to say that to anybody. Like, no, this is part of running a business. This is part of the whole thing. And that's such a gift you can give your people, is to make it an easy yes, to help them get an easy yes with other people in their lives. That's not like something that takes away from you. Ideally, the more you're saying it and the more you're doing it, it's just something that keeps adding to you. So hope that's really helpful. I also would challenge you to think about like, what are the things you've bought lately, and have they been explicit, you know, about why you should buy from them? Like I recently did this. What is it? Like, basically this woman, I don't know why I'm telling you all this, but here we go. Basically this woman is like a nurse practitioner, and she works in dermatology, and she has this like whole skincare quiz thing, and then she makes like product recommendations, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she's so explicit about how like medical grade skincare is the only thing, and she's the best person to get it from, and this quiz is like the end all be all, and she has like before and after pictures and all of this stuff. Like she just made it so easy for me. And then like, you know, even like in telling Kenny about it, I was like, oh, well, I took this whole quiz and I got all these recommendations and da 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 based on like my personal thing. And then like, it just made it easy to explain, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't just like, well, it's just like some girl I found on Instagram and I like her content. I was like, oh, she has like a whole thought process behind it. She has a philosophy. She has a quiz. She pointed me in the right direction. Da-da. Even just that is so much easier for the brain, so much easier for our people. So anyway, like I would challenge you to just like look at the ways you're like getting sold on things like this in life and other ways, like whether it's like, you know, whatever, skincare, coaching, business stuff. Otherwise, like I would be willing to bet that pretty much everything you're really attracted to or buying is because the person or company is being extra explicit, right? And especially the things that you have bought from quickly. So that's another thing. This speeds up your sales process. Like if she hadn't had all that quiz stuff and hadn't given me all these reasons, I probably would have followed her content for quite a long time. And then maybe I would have eventually warmed up and bought, but it would have been so much more of a long slog, slower process versus like pretty much like within a day or two of finding her, looking at her stuff, she gave me really good, valuable reasons to buy. I bought, done. So this is a way to speed up your sales process too. Where like, sure, if someone followed you long enough, they could eventually make a lot of these connections. But like, what if you just told them really early and really often? Wouldn't that make a difference in your sales plan too? So like that's something I play with my clients a lot too, is like, okay, so we know that like at the X month mark of following you, they're tending to buy and see your value. Like, how do we speed that up on the front end? Like, where are we missing the opportunity to tell them more, to tell them frequently, to tell them often why they should buy from you? So anyway, this is just not only a piece to help you like convert more, but it really does help you convert faster because their brain's not having to make all those connections over a long period of time. You're making it for them right away. Okay, and so to just reflect that one more time based on Sherry's question, that should both be about you and your business as a whole and about your offer. I think personally, like having it about you and your business as a whole is step number one. And it's like the first and most important. And then applying it to offers is really valuable. But like, yeah, you should know that. And like, it can be anything. Again, it's not like, oh, like if you don't have XYZ credentials or XYZ results, like, and I think that's what people miss is like, no one comes into coaching having client results yet, really. Do you know what I mean? Everyone starts somewhere, but they still have to have a value proposition. They still have to have a reason they should be hired. And so, yeah, like it doesn't have to be client results initially. Like I was saying to you guys, like my stuff at the beginning was way more about like having run another business and having the education and experience. And like now it's way, way, way more about my client results and things like that. Like it can change over time, but please let yourself start where you are and answer that question now. And don't fool yourself into thinking, well, I'll get clients first, then I'll get the results, then I'll have that to share. Like, no. You're just seeing that a lot because that is what a lot of people's value proposition has evolved into. But it's your job to pick one and say it consistently and often, even before you have those client results, so that I have a reason, right? So it's just like if I had a job interview and I didn't have the experience yet, I would give them other reasons that I was the perfect fit. If I had the job interview and I had the experience, I would just say, well, listen, I have the experience, right? So either one is fine. It's just different, right? But like this really, really is on us as business owners to clearly communicate this all the time to our clients, potential clients, and to the other people in their life potentially, right? That they can go share that with as well. Make it easy for them to hire you. Make it easy to give them a reason. And something I think about with this too is like, think about what reason might be most applicable to your potential clients and think about what reason might be most applicable to the other people in their lives. Like for example, that client I was telling you about earlier, like her dad really liked the fact that I had an MBA. Cool. That might not be the most important thing to her, but that was like a relevant factor for him. Fine. So for you, like your potential clients might be hiring you because of XYZ life experience, but like also you actually did work in corporate for a really long time doing XYZ. Like make sure that's part of the story too, so that they might be able to tell their other people that as well, right? You can round out that for them and make it easy. So anyway, like my point in that is like, don't discount some of your things too, because like, I'm kind of quick to be like, whatever, I have an MBA. It's like, who the fuck cares? But like someone cared. Cool. Like that's still relevant. So anyway, really like test yourself on that too. Like, am I being absolutely clear and explicit about why my potential client should hire me? And is there anything else I might want to put into my story that maybe isn't the biggest determining factor for them, but might be really important to the other people in their life that they're probably going to consult with as well? So something to think about there too. And I think that's it. Just tell them that, especially if you're showing up and giving value all the time. Oh my gosh, tell them that. Like, that is the missing ingredient. Don't just give and not make that mental connection for them, because you're just stretching your sales process way out. Cool. All right, guys, I appreciate you being here. Yes, Belinda says, see the evidence and don't ignore it. Perfectly said. Amazing. All right, I hope you all have a beautiful week. I am going to get a little rest this week. I haven't even been not resting. I'm just like, like existentially tired. That's what Sarah and I are. Did our Happy Thoughts podcast on today. But I hope that you guys all do the same. And I love you all. And thank you for being here. Bye.